Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
All right, let's turn to your day job. The stock markets had a terrible week since President Trump and President Xi had dinner in Argentina on Saturday night. The Dow lost 1,100 points, or 4.5%. The S&P 500 is now in the red for 2018. Question, how much of this is because of confusion over just what the U.S. and China have agreed to?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll grant you that, trade issues, China trade issues haven't been all buttoned down yet. But look, Chris, the first couple of days after that dinner, I was down there at G20 Argentina. The markets did very well, both in China and the U.S., as a matter of fact. Since then, there have been some issues. The Huawei issue, that's a technology company that was violating Iranian sanctions, and Canada has taken them in, and they'll probably be extradited to the U.S. There have been some different statements here and there. Look, I can just tell you right now, we are on track. China has finally, the Chinese own statements are really very positive.
Okay. Well, except that, for instance, the president tweeted 40% a tariff on auto imports is lifted. The Chinese have not committed to that. And there was a big bump in the road on Saturday night. President Xi and President Trump are sitting there having dinner together. You're at the table with them. And suddenly there's the arrest last Saturday of Meng Wanzhou, the chief financial officer of telecom giant Huawei, as you say, for allegedly violating U.S. sanctions on trade with China. A couple of quick questions. One, did President Trump know about that arrest when he sat down to dinner with President Xi? And if not, what was his reaction afterwards?
He did not know. He did not know, and he had no reaction afterward.
Well, the reports have been that he was livid, and frankly, just as an outsider, if one of the top businessmen in the other country was being arrested while I'm making nice at dinner, I'd be livid.
He didn't know, okay? I'll just state that unequivocally. He learned way later, by the way, way later. Look, regarding the Huawei prosecution, let me just say that's a law enforcement action. That's primarily Department of Justice. It is a very important issue because the evidence suggests, at least so far, the alleging suggests that Huawei did break the Iranian sanction through different financial channels. We will see how that plays out. That's a enforcement channel.
Can I just ask you a question about how
we're talking about it?
I just want to ask you one question about how it plays out, if I may, Larry. Republican Senator Marco Rubio said this week after the arrest that Huawei, a telecom giant, is a bad actor. Here is Rubio.
Knowing the history of Huawei and how it served as an instrument of Chinese espionage and influence, it's concerning, but if we have a case to be made, the right thing to do is to charge her, and the right thing to do for Canada is to extradite her.
But now China is warning the U.S. and Canada, where she is being held, that there will be consequences if she continues to be held. And one of the top papers in China, the Global Times, says that her arrest amounts to a declaration of war. Can you guarantee me that as part of this negotiation, the president, the administration will not let her go?
Chris, I can't guarantee anything. As I say, this is a DOJ, NSC law enforcement issue. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm not an attorney. It's outside my lane. So we will see. Look, the U.S. has laws about these things. The U.S. has a number of laws on the books now that protect a number of points. I mean, not only violations of sanctions, be it Iran or other countries, we have laws about anything that was stolen. We're discussing laws. People can't do business in the U.S. or sell us goods, services, intellectual property that we think was stolen. So that's just being tough and protecting the family jewels, in my judgment, and that's protecting the integrity of U.S. national security policy. Very, very important. How this affects trade, Chris, I can't sit here and be absolutely definitive. All I'll say is it seems to me there's a trade lane that we are discussing where you and I both agree the early returns from China are very positive, and it looks like we will get new actions. And there's a law enforcement lane. They're different. They're different. And I think President Trump and President Xi and lower officials will generate or continue to keep that difference. I might be wrong. I can't predict the future on this thing, but they're different channels, and I think they will be viewed that way.
It is Monday, the 10th of December of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Hey, it's not only mocking, it's mocking. Oh, boy. Donnie Two Scoops. The walls are tightening, and he's not really taking it well. I don't believe he's fat fingering. You know, this whole thing about misspelling, though, is a subtle tactic to, I mean, we're mocking it, right? Or we're smocking it. But we're also spreading it around, which is, good press, bad press is always good press. Doesn't matter. Either one. Sometimes bad press is even better press. And we're mocking his misspelling and the essential message that he's trying to get out to his people, because they don't care. They look at it and they think it spells smoking. Because, well, the uneducated flock to him. The ill-informed flocked to him. And he is able to tickle whatever it is that, eases the itch just a tad. And so we might be doing a disservice to ourselves. But on the other hand, I like to mock the guy at any point, at any juncture, and mock he should be. Yes. Well, not only that, at the top there, that was Larry Kudlow. He took a lot of cocaine. You can kind of tell by the way his tonal quality is a little off. That's what happens when you burn the inside of your nose. He doesn't know anything. He's like Sergeant Schultz. I know nothing. Of course he doesn't. Because if you say the wrong thing in this administration, you might end up, not around. And you never know what that might mean. I mean, when you consider that the command there in the Middle East for the Navy committed suicide, no one knows why. Convenient suicide? One of those, maybe? I don't know. It's weird. Speaking of brutal murders, and I can't even read the transcript about Khashoggi's last words, which was the same thing Eric Garner said when he was, choked off. And I can't even bring myself to read the transcript. I guess I don't need to. I know what human beings are capable of doing to other human beings. And I would think that you wouldn't want to associate with those types. I know that's a naive sort of viewpoint in the world. Sometimes you have to rub elbows with, the gritty kind. Yeah, well, gritty and, I don't know. There's a level where you just can't control that level of mental dissonance. So why associate it? In fact, why associate it with it? The only association would be to, put them in a pen so they don't hurt other people. They're going to hurt themselves inevitably. They always do. And in the process, they want to, take a few people with them, to ease the pain. But these leaders at the top, I think that they are now really seriously considering life behind bars. And it's quite a strategy to attain the presidency, to, delay the inevitable. Apparently the argument is, as long as he's president, he can't be convicted of these crimes, and if he's in jail, he's still the president. Well, you know what? These cases take quite a while. Let's not forget that. And there's going to come a time, very soon, in spite of Russian help, or China help, but I think it's mostly Russian help. Because let's remember, the GOP was unable to really win, even with gerrymandering, voter suppression, election fraud, all of that. They needed Russian help as the tiny push over the top. And that's what won it for them. Let's be clear. So in spite of any help, foreign or dark money, domestic, the GOP is going to lose their grip in this, their death grip on power. And it is a death grip on power and on democracy. They're going to lose that. And Donnie Two Scoops is not going to be protected by the presidency. Quite a strategy there, don't you think? Let's commit the biggest crimes and we'll use the presidency as our shield. They can't arrest us. They can't convict us. Nice work if you can get it. And it does, I keep going back to the Renaissance, the Enlightenment. Now, I know that these fellows were not naive. And some of them may have had a bit of jaundiced cynicism as well. All men of the Enlightenment, and there were women there too. Let's be clear. But it was the men who finally made the decisions. Finally. And it looks as if they had this belief that human nature would prevent a scum mobster like Donald Trump from attaining the power that he has attained. They didn't think it was possible that scum like that could rise to the top. And they may be right. They thought, they weren't looking at parties at that point. Remember, factions? If we want to go to originalism, maybe we should get rid of the party system. I will say, immediately after the ratification of the Constitution, the political structure did split into two factions, the Federalists and the Republicans, almost immediately. But if we were going to be original, maybe we should get rid of that. But they didn't envision a whole party actually being under the thumb of a hostile foreign power. And let's be clear, there are many explanations that don't make sense, do not make sense. And one that does is, follow the rubles. Follow the rubles. And I don't care if it was funneled through the NRA or not. They are tainted by it, and they know it. They call themselves a family, a mob family, and what happens with the family stays in the family. They admitted it. McCarthy is out there right now saying, oh, yeah, well, everybody colludes with and conspires with a hostile foreign power to win presidential elections. I mean, everybody does. Well, quite a few Republicans have. Let's put it that way. And they always say the Democrats and liberals do exactly what they do. No, they don't. Oh, did you hear about the right-wing evangelical minister, the son of Jerry Falwell, and his evangelical wife, and the pool boy? Yeah, sounds like Michael Cohen had some compromise on them, and that's why the evangelicals are so. Well, Trump is a collector of dirt on people to hold against him. I mean, it is a Roy Cohn strategy, is it not, from the McCarthy era? Trump is always trumpeting his, I play dirty. If they play dirty with me, I play dirty back. I got things on Mueller. Yeah, I bet you do. Hey, we have some other offerings on our menu today, in fact, and we should get right into them because there's lots going on in the world. We can't speak on it all, but we'll speak on it some. Well, here in the Bistro Cafe, on the rest of the menu of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the fight for a federal right to an education takes a new turn. Yeah, it's right there in the Constitution. We're supposed to, educate our voting public so that they are civic-minded citizens who know what they're voting about. Isn't that a communistic idea? Apparently not. School officials in Cranston, Rhode Island hired a debt collector to get families to pay for school lunches. Yeah, if you got $14 in arrears, they're coming after you, and you're going to have a bad credit rating, so you'll never be able to have a good life again because your kid couldn't afford the $3.50 box lunch. And Trump capo Mick Mulvaney gave big banks a discount for screwing people over. Yeah, this is the kind of value systems they have. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where after pushback from the usual suspects, the FBI does a U-turn on the Proud Boys extremist label. They meant, we meant just like an extremist Proud Boy, not the whole organization. There's some very fine people in that organization that was partly responsible for the murder of Heather Heyer. Speaking of which, a day after a neo-Nazi is convicted of the murder of Heather Heyer, members of the country's oldest, most violent skinhead groups are charged with hate crimes in Washington state. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link, and that is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And thank you, Kelly. She's pretty busy with real life responsibilities, but we appreciate her tremendous effort in helping this station. Thank you. You would then, if you could, I don't know what that means, but take a gander. I don't even know what that means. To the leftish of the homepage, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the contribute button. And all kidding aside, if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, even a small recurring donation the price of just a regular cup of coffee once a month goes a long way here at Networks Radio to keep the bills paid, the lights on, and the computer fans humming. If you can't tell, they're humming. And so thank you for your generosity. And we are unable to do this without you truly. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and I appreciate. We all do. Thank you, Tom, for doing that. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime, and you can find me on Daily Co's as Justice Putnam. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Oh, I forgot to say, we're on Facebook. So's Netroots Radio. So's the show. But, you know, Zuckerberg. And do pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Indeed. This first offering here at the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the conversation by Professor, University of South Carolina, Derek W. Black. A new fight to secure a federal constitutional right to education is spreading across the country. This fight has been a long time coming and is now suddenly at full steam. In 1973, plaintiffs in San Antonio Independent School District versus Rodriguez argued that school funding inequities violated the right to education. The Supreme Court rejected education as a fundamental right under the federal Constitution, leaving funding inequalities in Texas and elsewhere completely untouched. For more than 40 years, no one even dared to directly challenge Rodriguez's conclusion in court. Now, in just 2 years, 4 different legal teams and plaintiff groups have done just that. But this time, they are shifting their arguments away from just claims about money. They are focusing on educational quality, literacy, and learning outcomes. Uh-oh. You mean results? The boldest claim was filed on November 29th in Rhode Island, arguing that an education that prepares students for citizenship, an argument that draws directly on this professor's research legal research and expertise as a scholar of educational law. When plaintiffs filed the first 2 sets in Detroit and Connecticut in 2016, the Supreme Court was set to shift significantly to the left. Hillary Clinton was a strong favorite to win the presidency and fill the vacancy created by the death of Scalia. But what looked like perfect timing for plaintiffs in mid-2016 turned awful a few months later when this professor says Clinton lost. But we know Donnie was installed. The questions now are why plaintiffs, including new ones, continue to press forward and whether they have any chance of winning. The answer lies in a strange and tangled confluence of events that include school funding shifts, new legal theories, and evolving cultural challenges. Steep declines in school funding are real-world problems and first and foremost driving the litigation. Detroit schools, for instance, were among the most segregated, lowest performing, and most financially strapped in the country. The net result are schools where illiteracy is the norm. Detroit's problems, while severe, are not entirely unique. Public schools nationwide are suffering from increasing segregation and a decade of steep funding cuts. I would say decades, because they were cutting the schools. Well, I was lucky enough to get through, pretty much. I graduated early, pretty much because of the school funding cuts in our district. There was nothing left to take. I'd taken everything already. Well, I took what they called men's chef. A couple of, fun classes so that I could play football. But there was nothing academic left to take. I had taken it all. So what these lawsuits are arguing now is not money. the inequities of money and funding in various school districts, but the quality, the uneven educational outcomes from district to district even in similar counties. And these are attempting to right that wrong. And in the Constitution, and in all of the debates and essays written up until for the ratification, a public education was first and foremost. It was just almost presumed. But they also debated it at length. Sam Fullwood III of Think Progress brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it looks like school officials in Cranston, Rhode Island are getting pretty damn aggressive in seeking payment from parents in arrears for their kids' meals. Giving new meaning to the phrase "no free lunch," school officials in Cranston, Rhode Island hired a private debt collector to compel parents to pay up on delinquent lunch money accounts. Now, I don't really need to go through the whole particulars of this, because once you sign over to a debt collector, you pretty much signed over really getting the money, because they have bought that contract for pennies on the dollar owed. They'll get a few pennies, you'll get a penny. So they don't care about recouping this money. They don't. So it looks like this debt collecting company will begin dunning Cranston parents next month. And the collection agency will then report them to national credit bureaus, and delinquencies will then show up on their credit reports. So it's not about recouping the money. It's about maintaining an underclass. I don't know why I have a visceral revulsion to Mick Mulvaney. I can't figure it out, but there's just something about this guy that is so revolting. It just riles me up so, well, I don't like it. I really don't. Dan Desai Martin brings us this last offering here at the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays, by the way. Well, he used his tenure at the Consumer Financial Protection Board to do the bidding of corporations and not the consumers. Yeah, well, he's a capo. He was sent there to do a job, and he did it. The Senate approved Catherine Greninger as the new head of the CFPB, but not before Mick Mulvaney could make a mockery of the agency. Mulvaney took over the agency in November of 2017. Wow, in 1 year. Seems longer, doesn't it? And even though he hated the agency and once said, "I don't like the fact that the CFPB exists." When the Washington Post delved into Mulvaney's tenure at the CFPB, it found a disturbing pattern of Mulvaney using his position to go soft on companies that were harming consumers. Well, that was actually a directive. Don't forget that we voted for a black president twice, and we were warned not to do it even once. And if we did, there would be serious repercussions. And apparently fascism was the serious repercussion that they were talking about. One of his final actions as director was one of the most egregious after State Farm Bank was accused of giving credit agencies the wrong information about consumers and thereby hurting their credit scores. Mulvaney settled the case for 0 fines and a promise the bank would not do it again. Oh, you got kicked out of your house and now you'll never be able to ever purchase out, not even a car. You might not even be able to rent a car for the rest of your life because of the bank's mistake? Oh, well, you're just little people. The CFPB was created in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis to protect consumers against being taken advantage of by financial institutions. Republicans, always willing to do the bidding of their corporate donor overlords, tried and failed to weaken or defund the agency using legislation. So Trump did the next best thing by appointing a leader willing to sabotage the agency's work from within. Former Representative Barney Frank, never one to mince words, is in no way pleased with the actions of Mulvaney and the Trump administration. Well, who is? It's blatant dishonesty, Frank told the Post. He's accomplishing administratively what he couldn't do legislatively. Well, of course. Mulvaney's shady practices led one of the agency's top student loan officers to resign in protest, accusing Mulvaney of using the Bureau to, quote, serve the wishes of the most powerful financial institutions and companies in America, end quote, instead of helping American families. And it's very possible that Graninger, who previously worked in the Trump White House, will try to continue Mulvaney's legacy of kowtowing to big business interests. But this time, a new Democratic majority in the House will be able to hold her accountable. All right, let's get to our break. And when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, boy oh boy. At the very end of the 19th century, with the science of psychology in its infancy, early head doctors first looked at homosexuality as a mental disorder, one which they tried to cure. Welcome to the start of gay conversion therapy. Starting with hypnosis, doctors quickly moved on to harsher methods including electroshock and surgical mutilation, all in the erroneous belief that you could change someone's sexuality. Finally, after almost a century of abuse and torture, in 1974, 5 years after the Stonewall riot, the American Psychiatric Association declassified homosexuality as a disorder. Sadly, that act did not stop some mental health professionals and many non-mental health non-professionals. That's where Gerard Connolly found himself in 2004, 19, the son of a Baptist minister, and gay. His 2016 memoir, Boy Erased, tells the story of his time in gay conversion therapy, and, of course, it has become the source material of the movie by the same name, starring Lucas Hedges, Nicole Kidman, Russell Crowe, and the movie's writer and director, Joel Edgerton. Fresh off his 2015 feature directing debut, The Gift, Edgerton delivers an understated yet powerful movie in Boy Erased. Indeed, it's hard not to tug heartstrings with material like this, and the strength of the story may be why Edgerton chose to tell it with such a quiet tone. Just one aspect of a very carefully made film. From lighting to shot composition to depth of field and even costume design, you can see Edgerton and crew making smart decisions to put you with the lead character, Jared, and to keep you in his story. With our current vice president being an opponent to LGBTQ lives, there's no better time for a film about the horrors that people can inflict through ignorance, fear, and a fervent toxic dogma. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata.
As all of you know, today we are keeping faith with the future. I'm about to sign a proclamation that will establish the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument.
More than 20 years ago, President Bill Clinton stood on the south rim of the Grand Canyon announcing his intention to set aside nearly 2 million acres of Utah land that his proclamation said was home to, quote, many different vegetative communities and numerous types of endemic plants and their pollinators. Just how many pollinators, though, was an open question at the time, so a handful of intrepid entomologists set out, season after season, to observe and classify wild bee species in every corner of the monument. And they got 660 of them.
So 660 bees represents about half of the species known in Utah and about 1/5 of the species known from the United States. So there's a big proportion of the bees known from North America are found in the Grand Staircase National Monument.
Joseph Wilson, an entomologist at Utah State University who was involved in the efforts. But then, he says, just as they were about to publish those big results, his team got word the Trump administration was going to shrink the monument to half its size. So they reanalyzed their data in light of the new maps and found that the new monument left 84 of the 660 wild bee species outside its bounds.
What does it mean for these 84 species now that they're no longer in these protected lands? We really don't know.
Their analysis and maps of the monument and its bees are in the journal Peer J.
One of our main goals is just to make people aware that this area is a hotspot of bee diversity and that pollinators, including all these native bees, should probably be considered as the management plans for these areas get developed.
Just as they were considered in the monument's creation.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm dreaming of a white, non-sectarian, non-denominational, non-government-sponsored late December holiday. Hey, honey, come quick. It's the ACLU Carolers.
I'm singer-songwriter Patty Larkin, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
'Tis the season, the silly season, the time of year when some claim that the ACLU is against Christmas because we and other groups that believe in religious freedom fight to maintain the First Amendment guarantee of a wall of separation between church and state. Separation of church and state means that religious symbols, including a creche, that's a structure depicting baby Jesus in the manger, can be displayed on private property, but that public property is reserved for all the people and not one specific religion. It is the First Amendment's Establishment Clause that prohibits the government from endorsing, favoring, supporting, or trying to establish a national religion. The other half of the guarantee of religious freedom in America is the First Amendment's Free Exercise Clause. The Free Exercise Clause guarantees the right to observe and celebrate Christmas and freely exercise religious beliefs and to sing or not sing. So may your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, December 10th, 2018. I'm Mark Boulanger. The International Trade Union Confederation has announced the winner of its Worst Boss Award for 2018. The ITUC is the organization which represents national union centers such as the Ghana Trade Union Congress. The award was presented during the ITUC Congress in Copenhagen recently. Here's ITUC General Secretary Sharon Burrow.
Today we announce the worst boss of the year. Now, there were 10 shortlisted candidates. There was Amazon, terrible company. Bolloré, terribly anti-union. Glencore, absolutely brutishly anti-union. Uber, denying its responsibilities for working people who they are directly responsible for making profits from. Samsung, the group that has supply chains with massive exploitation right throughout the world, and its own manufacturing plants have been responsible for the deaths and the injuries of hundreds of workers from chemicals. And Walmart. You all know about Walmart. Walmart's actually so anti-union and so dependent until recently on the very lowest wages that for a long time its workers had to actually rely on food stamps as if they were not indeed working, and they were part of the poorest communities in the US. And of course they have a supply chain that is exploitative. Deliveroo. We actually know that Deliveroo, like Uber, actually makes its profit from dependent workers. But here they are, denying that they have an employment relationship. That's being tested in the courts. But this CEO, Will Shu, along with Dara, the new CEO of Uber, need to understand that their workers have rights. Then there is indeed the president and CEO of the Marriott International. As we went through this list, we also had Harvey Weinstein. Now, he was the former CEO of Miramax. You know why he's on the list. The atrocities of his treatment of women, the bullying, the harassment, the demands about sexual favours for promotion and work is not ever acceptable. I want to tell you that Samsung has now opened a conversation with the unions. We know that our support for the Korean unions and others in the supply chain has absolutely made a difference, but they're a big group. This is just with their manufacturing technology sector, and we need to keep up the pressure. But I have to say, despite being contacted by some of the CEOs, I didn't get a call from Jeff Bezos. I wonder why. Well, with the ITF and indeed Uni, we are taking on a campaign with unions around the world that is determined to break up Amazon, and you'll see more about that in the months to come. But let's get to the winner. The 2018 winner goes to a man who says for the last 30 years, hell would freeze over before there would be unions in his company. It's a man who built his company on low cost, low wages. It's a business model which exploits workers, and he knew it from the beginning. It's a man who fired workers for forming a union, a man who faced the biggest walkout in its history this year. It's a man called Michael O'Leary of Ryanair, the low-cost airlines, the bottom feeders which flies throughout Europe. This is a company who wants to control workers' lives, abuse and exploit the working conditions of our members, working men and people. Well, we will not have it. Michael O'Leary, we award you the worst boss of the year, 2018.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. The World Health Organization reports that more than 1.3 million people are dying on the world's roads each year, making road injuries the leading cause of death for children and young adults.
That's the tip of the iceberg. It's really 20 to 50 million injuries.
Natalie Drazen is the North America director of the FIA Foundation, which campaigns for safer roads. She rejects the term car accident, saying that accidents are acts of God while car crashes can be prevented. be it through reduced speed limits, tougher helmet laws, or lowering blood alcohol limits for drivers. Those aren't new ideas, but implementing them has been a problem. The U.S., for instance, fails to meet UN best practices on each of 5 different road safety criteria. But powerful spokespeople are starting to get the message across. Zuleika Mandela is the granddaughter of Nelson Mandela and a UN Child Health Initiative ambassador.
I'm a mother that has tragically lost a daughter to road traffic injury. My daughter was killed in 2010. She would have celebrated her 21st birthday this year, and she was killed by a drunk driver.
Mandela is working in parts of southern Africa to make the long and dangerous commutes that children walk to school safer, and her personal story has made her one of the world's most prominent road safety activists. Drazen says young people are also speaking out and increasingly turning heads. Students in Bangladesh, for instance, staged major protests this year after 2 high school students were run over by a speeding bus, and the government responded by passing new safety laws.
Especially because you now have children speaking up and demanding change. You have something that cannot be ignored.
If personal stories don't sway lawmakers, maybe economic data will. By one study, road deaths and injuries sap countries of between 3 and 5% of GDP. Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 42 degrees, and it feels like 42 degrees. We're lucky. It could feel warmer or feel cooler, but it feels 42 degrees, and we like that. Well, it could be warmer, but it feels like it is. Winds are negligible, light and variable out of the southwest, about 1 mile per hour. That's usually light and variable. We're going to have this about the same same temperature as we had yesterday, which will be about, 48. So not a large swing between the overnight low and daytime high. We have been raining, and will continue to rain throughout the day. Well, light rain throughout the day. And we are in foggy conditions. Indeed. So it looks like winds will be light and variable out of the southwest. We have fog. It should clear at some point today. I don't have any forecast for fog tomorrow, but it's quite foggy right now. Let's see. Pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is moderate, which is unhealthy for people with breathing conditions, at 74 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is at 1. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.27 inches. Visibility is down to a half mile. And relative humidity is at 82%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 41 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 50 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 60 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny, with a weather advisory of potential disruption due to wind. Steady winds right now out of the north at 8 miles per hour. Gusts will be, I have to turn on the actual active statement. They don't have it in the regular forecast. It looks like winds will be gusting to gale force winds. Oh my gosh. Okay, so take care if you're in Rome, Italy. All right. Kiev is 32 degrees with fog. Kabul is 29 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong, 58 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 40 degrees and fair. Sydney, Australia is 69 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 49 degrees and cloudy. And New York, New York is a chilly 35 degrees Fahrenheit, but bright and sunny as a day in New York should be. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Luke Barnes of Think Progress brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. The FBI is backtracking on labeling the Proud Boys. I'm shocked that they would do that. They're backtracking on that label of an extremist group just days after law enforcement documents seem to indicate that the agency planned to give the group that designation. The documents, which were first reported by The Guardian and then numerous other media outlets, including Think Progress in November, originated from the Clark County Sheriff's Department in Vancouver, Washington. The FBI categorizes the Proud Boys as an extremist group with ties to white nationalism, it read. Some Proud Boys members have contributed to the recent escalation of violence at political rallies. On Tuesday, however, the FBI special agent in charge of the Oregon field office directly contradicted the Sheriff Department memo. Agent Ren Kennan said the FBI did not mean to designate the whole group, rather to characterize the potential threat from individuals within that group. Really? Now, I could see where Clark County representatives came to that conclusion. That was not our intention. That's not what we do, Agent Cannon said. Of course, they do it with black nationalism, not any one particular group either. It's just black nationalism. If you're black and you believe in, autonomy and not being beat to hell or shot in your back while you're trying to herd innocent shoppers away from a madman and the cops shoot you in the back, if you advocate for that being stopped, you're a black nationalist and they'll come after your ass. But if you're a white fascist Nazi, somehow they can't bring themselves to condemn the whole group, which might be counter-espionage because it may mean that they've infiltrated the group. Let's give them that part. We will not open a case if someone belongs to Antifa or even the Proud Boys, Agent Cannon said. But they have against Antifa and black nationalists that they've designated as black nationalists, by the way. The distinction is more a technical one for the FBI, which is seeking to clarify that it won't investigate an extremist group unless they advocate for something which can be described as a federal offense. Now, of course, crossing state lines to riot in Charlottesville with the result of scores injured, a woman dead, Heather Heyer dead. I thought crossing state lines to commit a felony was a federal crime.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est c'est tout.
Brett Barrowcare from the Southern Poverty Law Center brings us this final offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Now, just hours after a jury convicted a neo-Nazi of murder of Heather Heyer for his actions at the Unite the Rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, individuals associated with some of the country's oldest and most violent racist skinhead groups have been charged with hate crimes in Washington state. Travis David Condor, a member of the band Birthright and head of the hate music record label American Defense Records, was among 9 people arrested at a bar in Linwood, Washington early Saturday morning. The Sonoma County Sheriff's Office said in a release that the people in custody attacked a black DJ at the Rec Room bar while shouting racial slurs at the man. The attack came on Martyrs' Day, which marks the anniversary of the death of Robert J. Matthews, a white supremacist who led a domestic terrorist group, The Order, in the mid-1980s. Oh, you mean the people that killed radio personalities? Uh-huh. As the enemy of the people, by the way. Matthews died December 8th, 1984, in a shootout with FBI agents on Whidbey Island in Washington state, and has become a hero to the white supremacist and neo-Nazi movements. All were arrested at about 12:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, just hours after a jury across the country in Virginia convicted 21-year-old James Alex Fields of murder for driving his car into a group of counter-protesters at the Unite the Right rally on August 12th of 2017. The verdict in Fields' case has been closely watched in the racist, alt-right, and white supremacist communities, and the guilty finding drew outrage from them online. Condor was photographed rallying alongside members of the Hammerskin Nation and other white supremacists at the Charlottesville rally, which turned violent before being dispersed by police. Now, I don't understand. They crossed state lines to commit a riot. Oh, yeah, Unite the Right. And what did they do? They surrounded synagogues and Jewish memorials, harassed people, beat the crap out of people, and they all talked about doing it. But apparently, in the previous story, the FBI didn't deem them, a hate group. Hammerskin Nation's region members, have been involved in violence at political rallies across 2017. Western Hammers were also involved with the Rise Above movement, which participated in violence during rallies in Huntington Beach and San Bernardino, California. And members were photographed during the April 2017 Berkeley riot. Perhaps the Hammerskins' most infamous member is Wade Michael Page, who gunned down 6 worshippers at a Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin in 2012. Well, Page turned his pistol on himself after engaging first responders, including Lieutenant Brian Murphy, who Page shot 15 times during a shootout in the temple's parking lot. The Order is celebrated by white supremacists for its underground spree of terror, which lasted just over a year. The group ran a sophisticated counterfeiting operation, committed numerous armed robberies, and netted millions of dollars. In June of 1984, members of the Order murdered Alan Berg, a Jewish talk show radio host from Denver who was known for his fiery debates with white supremacists who called into his show. Police and sheriff's deputies said the DJ, who was not immediately identified, was taken to a nearby hospital with life-threatening injuries. Some of his equipment was also damaged. Condor and another man, Corey Thomas Colwell of Eugene, Oregon, faced multiple charges, including assault and malicious harassment based on race, which the state considers a hate crime. And in the link provided in the show notes and Link's diary on Daily Kos is a list of all the others who were arrested along with this neo-Nazi. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but Netroots Radio will broadcast on. We're going to meet up with you tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up with you here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.